Howdy, Immortallium here, and welcome to Cultured Immortallium. And you know how I'm all about, accessing things legally, of contributing to the industry, of making a difference. That's a pretty hard thing to do with hentai anime. At least in English. It seems that a lot of it is very kind of region locked. There isn't much legal access to it. But this kind of new kid around the block just showed up. It's called OceanVeil. OceanVeil is a streaming service, which among many other things, their primary content is hentai anime series. And considering how I want to, be able to contribute to the industry, to be able to improve the industry, because let me tell you, and I will be talking about this in a future video, I think the hentai industry needs a lot of help, a lot of changes. But anyway, beyond that, I think OceanVeil has a lot of potential. And so that's why I want to cover it today. Talk about, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, how I think it can improve in the future, etc., etc. Now, just in the interest of full disclosure, I have interviewed the OceanVeil team about OceanVeil before, and I also wrote up a first impressions of it, which I thought was a fair first impressions. I gave what I liked about it, I gave what I didn't like about it. Some people thought I was a bit harsh, but, honesty, that's the only way that anything's ever going to improve, as far as I'm concerned, at least. So yeah, let's break down OceanVeil here and see what it has to offer. So let's start off with the kind of first impressions of OceanVeil. And minor, but not the best of first impressions. That, very minor. So yeah, let's move on to the actual website itself. And that is the thing. Currently, it is only a website. From what I've heard, I believe they said something about there being like policies regarding apps and adult content, which means that they're not going to be able to put out any apps anytime soon, not unless something changes. So for the moment, the only way you're going to be able to access OceanVeil is through the website itself. And how does this website look? So, I mean, if you're at all familiar with, streaming services in general, a lot of the layout of the website is going to look very familiar to you. You've got your carousel at the top, kind of spinning through shows. You go down a bit, you're going to see a bunch of shelves, covering a wide variety of content, like what certain genres and, new releases and all that kind of jazz. Pretty standard stuff. I will say, I have a 1440p monitor, and I don't know if it's specific to this type of monitor, but the carousel seems disproportionately large compared to the shelves below, and there's a lot of blank spaces around the site. I do think that could be improved. I took a look at it on my tablet as well. It seemed to be a similar issue, although on a smaller scale, obviously, when I was looking at it like how I would normally do. But when I switched it to vertical, it looked actually relatively okay. So I feel like this website might be more kind of geared towards, mobile phones and that kind of stuff, which I think is a bit of a miss. I think they should definitely try to make it look good on any platform that you're capable of accessing it from. But besides that, you've got some little functions here and there. I noticed that they just added a search bar recently. That wasn't there initially. I think it is also actually worth noting, since I just bought the search bar, and you're probably wondering yourself, they only just started adding a search bar recently? This website's technically in beta, but I do use the term technically because, of a certain reason I'll get onto in a little bit. But right now, they are technically in beta. And so, yeah, they did add a search bar recently. And the search bar, if you type in the show that you're looking for, you will find it. It will pop up. But an important thing to note is that it doesn't show anything until you've actually hit enter. That's a little bit different to how the search functions works in, other apps where, for instance, in Netflix, you'll get a variety of shows popping up as you type things out, and maybe the show you're looking for will be found among them. You don't have that many options when it comes to your account settings. For the most part, I think it's fine at the moment. There is one particular account setting that I would like to discuss, and I'll discuss that in a moment, actually, because it brings me to my next point. When I interviewed OceanVeil, I wanted to kind of know how they were going to handle the content on there, because they were talking about, having kind of safe for work or relatively safe for work titles alongside not safe for work titles. They love using ocean metaphors. So they were talking about, you're going to have to dive deep in order to find the content. The hidden treasure, I think, is how they said it. And I was curious to see how this would, work. When the website came out, things have changed a little bit, but there are now 3 ways to be able to access it. And only one of them is in any shape or form subtle. Basically, when you go onto the website itself, you're going to see these banners. And these banners are basically ways to like move you into the adult content. I do believe there is like a little pop-up. In fact, I'll just quickly double check. Yep, there is a pop-up that mentions, would you like to access the adult content? So there is a pop-up that pops up, but, you know, obviously not much of a defense if for, you know, anyone. That's not the only way. There is also at the top right now these kind of buttons. One's SFW, safe for work, and one is NSFW. So that's another way to switch around. And then probably the version that I like the most. Oh, they changed that. There was a little thing that I quite liked that they had originally in the menu, where it was like this little kind of arrow pointing up and arrow pointing down, like, you know, diving deep and stuff. But it looks like they've removed that. They've just replaced it with the actual SFW and SFW buttons. That's, you know, a little bit disappointing maybe. I do have to kind of bring up again the fact that they were talking before about it being hidden. And it is not hidden. Not in any way, shape, or form. You know, for the most parts, that's probably fine. But there is one aspect of that that I do specifically want to mention, and that is their intentions going forward. There's literally nothing stopping you, besides that pop-up, I guess, and that's not even stopping you, really, of just accessing the adult content. So I think if they're aiming for a general audience at some point, I think they need to put in some kind of password protection for when you go into the NSFW content. But that's just my personal opinions. Of course, you folks can let me know if you agree or disagree with that statement, but I just think it's a logical move on their part. So having gone through all of that, I guess now it's important to talk about the content. You know, you're going to be like subscribing to the service. What are you getting for it? Something that's worth mentioning is that initially when they launched, basically their general content section was just kind of censored versions of their own shows. Something that certainly isn't particularly impressive given all of the promises they had up to this point. Now, recently, not only have they been adding in a couple of shows, I don't know if they have any personal involvement with Kakushite Makina-san and stuff like that, but they have partnered up with Animego, the American company, to release some older content on there, and they've got stuff on there now like AD Police Files, Bubblegum Crash, Riding Bean, you know, a couple of classic stuff. Time of Eve, that's another one. You know, it's a relatively small addition overall, I would say. You know, it's still quite lacking in terms of the general content, but at least, you know, we've seen some level of improvement. But right now, I would say by far and away, the general content is the most lacking aspect of this. As far as I'm concerned, you're probably not going to be subscribing to the service specifically for the general content at the moment. There's still a lot of work to be done on their part to expand it. So now we get to kind of the meat of the service at the moment, and that is their hentai catalog, their adult catalog. And I was trying to figure out the best way to break all of this down. So my initial strategy, and you're going to see a flaw that I realized after a while, was I went to their mature shelf and just counted through their stuff. And as of the recording of this video, there's 31 different hentai series on that shelf. Now, one mistake I made was I realized in the next part, when I was, you know, doing research into how some of these shows were received, I realized that there was actually quite a bit of stuff that wasn't on that shelf, mainly like, you know, their BL stuff and some of the, even of their own stuff. But as far as I'm aware, all of their third-party releases were, like third-party hentai releases, were present on that shelf. So I still think that this research, it stands regardless. So I was curious to see how to break this down, and I decided that I was going to try to kind of break this down less on my own opinion and more kind of a general opinion, just so that, you know, it has more of a chance of being helpful to people. And so I thought the best way I would do this would be to actually go to MAL. Now, of course, I'm sure many of you are already aware of what MAL is. MAL is My Anime List. They catalog huge amounts of, you know, anime series, manga series. People are able to write up lists of like stuff they've seen and what rating they'll give them. They also have a section for hentai. So I decided to go through their hentai section to take note of every show that is present currently on OceanVeil, to, you know, see what their score is, get the mean, what are the bottom 5 shows on there, what are the top 5 shows, etc., etc., just to see the quality of their catalog. And so let's start off with kind of the more positive aspects, which is the top 5 shows that they currently have. So according to MAL, the top 5 hentai series that OceanVeil has are, this first one really surprised me actually, The Molestation That Became Avid Higher Erotic Love. Honestly, I'd never heard of the series. I didn't really seem impressed with the concept of it, so I'm surprised that it's the best reviewed, but it is. We've also got Overflow, which Overflow I'd heard of, and Overflow is also made by WW Wave Corporation, which is the company that owns OceanVeil, so that kind of makes sense in a way. After that, you've got Fella Hame Lips, Lover-in-Law, Adam Sweet Agony, and as you can see from the ratings, this actually kind of okay ratings. It's worth noting that the highest rated hentai on Mal has a 7.95. So all of these are within at least one, point of that score, which is pretty good. One thing I will note, though, is that of the top 100 hentai series on Mal, I believe that OceanVeil only has 3 of them on there currently. So that is certainly an area that I think that they could certainly expand on. If they want to become, like, the place to be when it comes to, hentai series, I think it'd be quite logical to expand on the series that people generally enjoy. So going after that top 100 would probably be a good idea, but for the moment, they've got a couple of representatives from it. Now for the opposite end of the scale. Let's take a look at the bottom 5 series that they have, the worst series that they have. So at first place, as in the 5th worst series that they have on there, is a series called The Naughty Adventures of Demon Queen Melissa. And then after that, we have a series called There's Something Wrong with This Company. We have Netorase Rare, which, I can kind of guess what the kind of story is about. Masochistic Mary and the Sadistic Salvadors. And finally, we've got, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Nipplheim's Hunter. So those are the 5 worst received series on Mal. And it's interesting because if you take, I really had to speed through these calculations, folks. I wasn't going to go through over 1,700 series of hentai in order to be able to get their scores and stuff. I did kind of 2 ways to check what kind of the average score is. So the first thing I did was I took the lowest and highest score from their hentai section. So the highest rated, as I said before, is 7.95. The lowest rated is 2.32. Halfway between that is 5.14. So in fact, all of their series are above that, even Nipplheim's Hunter. So that's good. The one kind of thing that's important to mention, though, is that the 2.32 is a bit of an outlier. It doesn't really get consistent until you get to 4.21. So I also decided to do halfway between 4.21 and 7.95, which is 6.08. And of their 31 series, 9 of them are underneath that average. So, it's still, above average, but I do think there could be some work done on the content, particularly when it comes to the variety of the content. I think it's also worth noting the most recent third-party hentai that they have, as well as the oldest. As far as I can tell from my research, the most recent third-party hentai they have is Nipplheim's Hunter, the one that's apparently the worst reviewed of all the hentai series they have on there. Not a great look. While their oldest series is from 2004 and is called Panty Flash Teacher. So not too much range when it comes to, the years covering these hentai series. Basically, it's just 16 years. And, I would like to see both, more current series going on, as well as some, some of the classics, some of the older series. So that's another area that I would hope that they would expand on in the future. Now, just since we're on the topic of these shelves, I think it's something that is very strange and is something that I think OceanVeil needs to fix sooner rather than later, is the way that their series are arranged. If I go to one of their mature shelves, what many people will notice is that a bunch of their series have multiple listings. What I mean by that is that, like, a series, if it has 2 episodes, will have 2 different listings. If a series has 3 episodes, it'll have 3 different listings. And I think that's very strange. Of course, if you go to, most streaming services, you're going to see like all of the episodes contained within one kind of block. And I think I remember asking OceanVeil about this, about like why are they arranging it like this? And I think they said something about the licensors consider like each product to be separate. And so, it has to be listed separately. I know that that's a licensor issue, but it's something that I really think that OceanVeil needs to look into, like, soon. They need to fix this issue because it's not a good look. It makes it more awkward to be able to navigate the website. It's really bad, particularly when things are out of order on the shelf. I don't understand why they haven't fixed this yet. This is something that they really need to work on, I think. Now, having talked about all of that, well, there's another bit of usability issues later on, but I will get onto that in a moment. So let's talk about, how to access OceanVeil. So you have two ways to access it. So let's start off with the first one, which is the subscription, because obviously they want you to subscribe. And the current subscription is $12.99 a month. Now, if you look at some other services, some other streaming services, you will probably see that $12.99 is a little higher than what some of these other services are charging. And this is quite strange, given that the catalog right now doesn't seem to be that big. Now, again, I believe OceanVeil has responded to this and said something about, due to the fact that they're, dealing with adult content, that there's more risks involved, and so they consider the higher cost to be justified. But I do think it's worth noting because, again, we're talking about economics here. We're talking about people having to pick and choose, opportunity costs and all that. And, if you're going to be able to subscribe to one service that has loads of content for slightly cheaper than another service that has less content and is more expensive, most people are probably going to pick that first service, right? And the annoying thing as well is that this is technically a beta. So there should totally be like some kind of discount or, program. They need to be getting feedback on all of this stuff. And of course, the less people who are using this site, the less feedback they're going to be getting. Now, the caveat to that is that there is an option to do a free account, to create a free account, which is currently what I have with them. And what will the free account get you? Not very much, but, we'll break that down. So currently, as far as I can tell, with the free access, with the free account, you're able to access the censored version of Wave Corporation's shows. You're able to navigate the website, and you are able to check out some previews for their premium content. That premium content being their adult content, as well as those shows from Animego. But this is where we get into another issue, I think, which is to do with their previews. So for instance, let's take an example. So I went to Energy Kyoka to take a look at the preview when I was, originally covering this. And I just checked there, it's the exact same situation. Basically, when you click on the preview, I think most of the previews are like the first 30 seconds of the show, which, fair enough preview. But in the case of Energy Kyoka, the first 30 seconds are all logos. Japanese logos, maybe some like warnings and all that kind of stuff, but no actual footage from the show itself. So as you can imagine, that's incredibly unhelpful. And so I do think it would be worth their time and effort in order to make maybe custom mini previews, take a couple of clips throughout each episode and like show them off in the preview so you can kind of have more of an idea of what type of content you're going to be getting. On that note as well, I do note that they've started including a tag system as part of their search bar, but it seems very basic right now. As far as I can tell, they haven't included the tag system within the actual series themselves, which considering a lot of this content, how picky people can be about the type of content they want to watch, I do think that this is something that they need to do quickly. They need to start expanding it. It can't simply be part of just the search function. I think it needs to be included on the actual pages of the shows themselves. So, in the end, what are my thoughts on OceanVeil? I think OceanVeil has a lot of promise. I would like to see the service succeed. As I mentioned before, this was an idea that I was kind of thinking of myself of like, why isn't there a hentai streaming service, like a legal one? So when I saw that this was being made, I had a lot of hopes, but I do admit that right now, it seems a little lacking. Their general catalog is quite limited right now. Their hentai section, which is a little more varied, is still quite limited and is still missing a lot of the series that many people would consider to be among the best of hentai. The website itself is serviceable, but there's so many improvements that they can still make with it. In terms of, the search functionality, in terms of the tag system, in terms of, protection, with regards to, accessing the mature content. I really think that's something that you need to get a look at right now. And especially that whole listing like episodes individually thing. I just think that's madness. And I know it's a demand of the licensors, but they've really got to tell them, look, you can't be doing that. This is a bad look. And of course, the pricing as well is a little contentious as well. Something I didn't mention as well is that the only way that you can currently pay for this service, that you can subscribe to for this service, is to use PayPal as well. So that's going to be a problem for some people. Now, I don't want to sound like I hate the service because, as I said, I want to see it improve. I want to see it succeed. And so it is my hope that they will take this feedback, they will look at these issues, they will refine them, fix them, find solutions. And I would also encourage you folks to, at the very least, go to their website and set up an account. You know, at least navigate the website yourself, check out the content, see if the content appeals to you, and if it does, maybe you'll want to subscribe to it, you know? I really do want to see the service succeed, but I also believe that criticism is valid, and it is my hope to someday come back to do a brand new review, maybe when the service comes out of beta, and to be able to say, yes, subscribe to it. But unfortunately, right now, I haven't gotten to that point yet. I can't with 100% confidence say, subscribe to this service. What I will tell you is go ahead and set up your free accounts, because I think you should at the very least be providing them feedback. Let them know what you want to change, what you want to be added. Gather your own thoughts and opinions. Maybe talk about it on social media. Also, I believe they have a Discord server as well. So if you want to, give feedback on the website there as well, go ahead and do that. I do want to see this service succeed. I can't emphasize that enough. And it is my hope that one day it'll be improved enough that I can fully recommend it. But yeah, that's my current thoughts on OceanVeil. And so, of course, as always, I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Have you checked out OceanVeil yet? Had you even heard of OceanVeil? If you have, what are your thoughts on the service? Do you like the content that's on there? Do you think the pricing's fair? Do you have your own criticisms? And if they are, what criticisms are they? Are you going to be going to set up a free account? And will you be providing feedback to OceanVeil so that they can improve? So if you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like. It would be greatly appreciated. Consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other content. At this point, every bit of support is appreciated. If you want to support the channel and to support the industry, you can also use my affiliate links in the description below. I also have a code from Iridori Comics, so go ahead and use that. When you purchase Cultured Works through those links, or use that code, not only are you supporting the industry, but you're also supporting this channel as well. So of course, I would absolutely appreciate that. This has been Owen, also known as Immortallium, living the cultured life. So don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.